On my journey to become a better home cook, I've watched a lot of videos that call themselves knife skills videos, and there are so many good ones out there that do genuinely teach you a lot about how to use a knife. One thing I've realized though in watching them is that more often than not, the skills they're teaching I don't need as a home cook. These are like restaurant skills that just are unnecessary in my kitchen. And not only that, but I think they've actually kind of taught me to ask the wrong questions. They've taught me to think about, oh, how do I cut this really precisely, as opposed to what will this cut do in the dish that I'm making. So this video is gonna kind of flip that upside down, and I'm gonna give you what I think are the three kind of big areas that a knife science is gonna help improve your actual cooking. And that's how cuts affect timing, how cuts affect the flavor release or the taste, and how cuts affect the texture of a dish. To demonstrate what I am talking about here with the timing, taste, and texture, I'm gonna use garlic for a couple reasons. I think it's so ubiquitous, like everybody's used it and knows kind of how it's used. And it's also one of those ingredients that, depending on the recipe, varies a lot. Like someone might say, use a whole crushed clove of garlic, or someone might say, mince the garlic or chop it finely. So I think it's gonna be a great example as we get into this a little bit. So our first graph that we're gonna wanna use is about timing and how cuts affect timing. This might seem really basic, but when you are talking about knife science, what you're really talking about is how to use a piece of metal to make a big food into smaller foods. And in the process, you're changing the way that that food interacts in various ways. One of the main ways you're changing it is that the more cuts you make, the more surface area you have created in the food. And this surface area affects the way the food cooks. One of the things it does is more surface area means more heat can get into the food. The more heat that gets into the food, the faster it cooks and the more it breaks down. On the inverse of that, the more surface area, the moisture can actually come out of those cuts and again cause the food to cook more rapidly. So as you have more cuts in the food or a smaller cut, the faster it's gonna cook. Examples where this matters are like a long, slow braise might call for a whole ingredient. This is because we don't want it to totally turn into mush or fall apart. This is the similar, same sort of principles behind how flavor works. On our graph for flavor, instead of timing, we're gonna deal with flavor release, taste increase, and then the cut size will be the same. So if I just crush a clove of garlic and put it into a dish, the flavors will come out of that garlic, but much more slowly, much more mellow. Whereas if I put in a bunch of minced garlic into something, it's gonna be really powerful flavor very quickly. And so the more flavor you want to hit a dish quickly, or the more you want it to really come out, you are gonna wanna ask yourself, how finely do I wanna cut it? Because that's really gonna matter for that. Last, but definitely not least, is texture, which really has a huge impact on how a meal is experienced and how it tastes even, but it does get overlooked by the other two, the cooking time and the taste. That said, I do wanna show you how this will affect the overall flavor, because it is different. On the X graph, we have again here our cut size, but on the Y, instead of going low to high, I'm gonna flip these ones now, where a low cut is actually gonna leave more texture. This is because the less cuts you make, the more it's gonna retain its original texture. It's gonna stay firmer, it's gonna stay crisper, it's gonna overall just stay more in its original form. Whereas the smaller you make it, the more it's gonna blend into whatever you're doing. Usually, if you're really wanting to hide a texture, you're gonna try to get it really small, even smaller than this kind of small chop or dice of this garlic. You might really get it to a paste so that it just disappears. Whereas if I wanna garlic probably isn't a great example, carrots might be a better example, where if I wanna, at the end in a roast, I want them to still be there. I don't want them to have dissolved. I'm gonna leave them bigger. It's a little bit misleading because they will still be soft at the end, but they won't be gone. And that's kind of the important thing, is that they are bringing something to the table, even in that long, slow roast. So instead of thinking about your knife skills, my hope is that the next time you pick up your knife in the kitchen, you start thinking about how the cut you're working on or what the recipe is calling for is gonna affect the dish you're having at the end. This is gonna make you better intuitive kind of cook in the kitchen, but it's also gonna help you if you wanna start making food that doesn't follow a recipe, that goes on your kind of own intuition. You know, maybe I want something to happen fast and I want it to have a lot of flavor, so I'm gonna cut it small. Or I'm gonna be braising something, cooking it all day, low and slow, and I don't, I'd like to have some of it left when I get to the end, so I'm gonna leave it big, and I'm not gonna make lots of cuts in it. These are just examples of ways you can kind of play with the graphs that I showed you in this. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I love bringing some of this content to you. I'm having a lot of fun making it. And stay tuned for more kitchen and cooking stuff as we get going.